I'm Shalonda Reese, and I would like to share with you a personal essay. It's the first of several that I'm working on, and it's called A Spirit of Fortitude. Fear can be the greatest enemy that can turn anyone into a coward, and it can keep one stagnant. Life can and will build up one's fortitude depending on the person's response. Sometimes fear does not manifest itself as fear. It can be disguised as something else, tricking one into thinking that he is more courageous than he really is. Life presents many small challenges that test the spirit. I walked in undiagnosed fear for many years. I was too afraid to deal with my pain. I was too afraid to confront rejection. I was too afraid to be vulnerable. All due to fear. And fear was an enemy to my fortitude. Fortitude is the courage to go through trials, troubles, and pain. And the courage to confront pain and deal with it is built over time. I remember when I was 5 years old, on a school bus sitting a few seats behind the driver. A boy named Isaac scratched my face as I sat there and did nothing. And it seemed to have happened in slow motion. I was frozen in place as he methodically came towards me. And instead of stopping him, I allowed the act to take place. The fear that settled in the pit of my stomach paralyzed me. And I remember the bus driver looking through her rearview mirror as she was driving and did nothing. And I sat there wondering, why did she do nothing to stop Isaac? It was strange to me at the time, being that she was an adult and did nothing. I expected her to be an adult and do something. And I remember feeling a twinge of disappointment at myself, that I did nothing in defense of my being. Yeah. And it took me a while to reconcile that, especially when I got to middle school. He was there. And when I would see him, that is all I could remember about him. Nothing else. I no longer feared him. He seemed to not remember what he did to me because he often expressed his like of me. I did not like him back the same way. I did not dislike him. I did not hate him. I just could not get the incident out of my memory and out of my spirit of what he'd done to me. And I never mentioned it to him. And I didn't see the point, for I believe that he really did not remember. Could I blame him? He was only 5. I mean, it's interesting how things that seem to be trivial end up affecting the psyche years later. The experience of a child really do shape how she develops into an adult. And that is why the childhood years are the most precious, the most delicate, the most fragile. And much of the issues that I dealt with as an adult stemmed from childhood. I mean, I did not realize that until I reflected on my life. Issues do not just manifest out of the blue. They stem from the root of fear and childhood trauma. And many people walk around traumatized and don't even know it. They have certain issues in their adult lives and they have no idea why they're dealing with this issue or that issue. And as a matter of fact, trauma can cause a mental block. That's what happened to me. Only certain parts of my childhood I remember. I was painfully shy as a child, and my mother and sister told me that when I was a student at Head Start, which was a school for 4-year-olds, I would not speak up and answer questions when the teachers called on me. And because I would not talk, they thought something was wrong with my speech. And so I was sent by bus to attend speech class. And I remember going to speech, but I do not remember remaining silent when the teachers called on me. I don't remember that. And the reason why I would not speak was due to the trauma that was taking place in my home life at the time. My mother and sister would ask the same questions the teacher asked me, and I would answer them just fine. I just simply would not answer the teacher. And as an educator, I can understand a student who sits in class and does not speak up. Most likely that child is suffering from some type of trauma. And I'm not quick to label a student as having a disability, because supposed disabilities are just a mask for trauma that has shown up and manifested as social or learning deficiencies. My timidness lasted well into my adulthood. I was in college majoring in education and knew that if I wanted to teach, I had to do something about being bashful. And I took classes that I thought would bring me out of my shell, acting being one of them. And it worked. I was able to perform in front of an audience. But that did not solve my issue. I was suffering from the lack of courage in my heart that was rooted in fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of ridicule, and fear of self. I lacked fortitude. I had pieces of it, but the pieces were scattered. The reason the pieces were scattered was because I did my best to avoid pain. The pieces were there to be put together within me, but fear kept me from dealing with pain. And if I did deal with some aspect of it, it was with a wall built up in me that kept the pieces from coming together. I remember having a birthday party at the age of 10 at McDonald's and not having my middle to upper class friends show up. I went to theirs, but they did not come to mine. My family did not come from poverty. We were fed and clothed, but we were working class. And where you lived determined your socioeconomic status. And I struggled with accepting that there were some parents who did not want their daughters to hang out with me in my neighborhood. I was welcome to go to their neighborhood. I was a good student, well behaved, and was involved in school, but with certain friendships that I had, they were only allowed on their turf. I understood that. As a child, I even respected it. But one incident that happened in the school library at the age of 12, I remember clearly. My friend at the time, I will call her Casey, to conceal her identity, lost her pen. And it was one of those pens that wrote in different colors, red, blue, pink, purple. Those were really popular back then. They were fat pens. And I and a few of the girls were standing around a table. And she checked my bag, playing it off as if she were looking for something else. But I knew she was looking for her pen. And when she did not find her pen, I suppose she felt guilty or embarrassed because she laughed it off uncomfortably. And I said nothing in defense of myself. Nothing at all. And of course, she did not find her pen in my belongings because I was not and am not a thief. during that period of my life, I often wondered, why would she assume that I took it? Or why would she suspect that it was me? I had no history of stealing. I mean, was it because my family supposedly had less than what her family had? Or was it something her parents said about me? Was there a stigma attached to me due to my family's socioeconomic status? I developed a complex. And Casey and I remained friends for about a year after that, until we just eventually drifted apart. I mean, we remained friendly with each other, but it was always in the back of my mind that Casey saw me differently than she did her other friends. And the pain of that just sat there with me for a while because I did not know how to constructively and actively deal with it. But that complex I developed was the beginning of my journey to being courageous. Minor or small incidents that we blink at or brush to the side can be the very incidents that help build us up into the courageous men and women we are supposed to be. I have experienced so much, most of which I would never reveal, that by the time I was a full-fledged young adult, it seemed as if I had lived a whole life already. And I remember a few of my acquaintances in my young adult years telling me that I was wise for my age. An incident happened in my 8th grade year that tested the will of my spirit. I and my other classmates took a standardized test to determine placement for high school. And to be considered college prep, a student had to score at least 60% correct from what I remember being told. And on the day of the test, I was sick and could not concentrate the way I would have if I were well. And I ended up getting a score of 56%, if I remember correctly. I do remember my score being in the high 50s, though. And because I was an A student in my English language arts class, my teacher told me to go to the high school counselor during the summer to be put into college prep classes, and that she would do a recommendation for me if they needed one. And that is what my mother and I did. And the counselors who were there say that the students who scored 70% or higher were automatically placed in college prep, but they allowed for some of the students who scored in the 60s to be put into college prep. So I guess that was their way of telling me that there was no way they were going to put me in college prep with my score just being in the 50s. So I became determined that once I started high school, I was going to score an A that first quarter in my English class as proof that I was capable of doing college prep work. I got an A on my report card and went to the guidance counselor to get switched over to college prep for the second quarter. And I filled out the paperwork, and so did my English teacher, who approved me to be in English college prep classes. And once the second quarter rolled around, I was in an English college prep class. I proved myself. Now, that year, my only college prep class was English. Once I made it to 10th grade, I knew all my classes had to get switched over for me to get a chance to go to a four-year college. So I made just about all A's my freshman year of high school, and I believed that I had proven myself capable of doing challenging work. So I was able to get into Algebra 1 my sophomore year, even though that was a class that should have been taken my freshman year based on how they suggested you should take class, or based on how they suggested when you should take classes to get all of the college prep classes in before you graduate. And to catch up, I took geometry and algebra 2 at the same time my junior year and passed both with A's and B's. Now the hindrance was in my 10th grade physical science class. I was the highest achieving student in the class. And I remember one of the college prep students walking by, seeing me in the class and teasing me about it. And he wasn't doing it maliciously, but I was ashamed because I knew I could do better than where I was at the time. And at the end of that quarter, I asked my science teacher to sign the paperwork to be put into college prep science class. And she refused. It surprised me initially because I was the only student that she relied on to have class. I mean, the other students did not put as much effort into their work as I did. I studied, I passed the test with A's and B's, I did my homework and got an A in the class on my report card. But she would not sign the paperwork for me to be put in college prep classes for science. I do not even remember if she even gave me a solid reason as to why, but I do remember her facial expression. And her expression was that of disdain, almost as if she were thinking, how dare you try to challenge yourself just because you got an A in my class? I was disappointed. And it was almost a blow to my self-esteem. She made me feel as if I was not worthy of being challenged in a college prep class. I went behind her back to my guidance counselor and got it approved anyway. That next semester, I was in college prep science class, biology. And at that point on, I had transitioned into all college prep classes for all the subject areas. So I was smart, book smart, and even my teachers would admit that I was smart, but I had to prove myself. There were people in life, family, friends, acquaintances, strangers, who tried to make me feel as if I was not worthy of striving for better. I learned this early on, that people who smile in my face and are nice to me are not always in my corner when I try to move up or move forward. My first 2 years of high school was a test of my will, my fortitude, to see if I would settle for where I was placed or if I would have the courage to find a way to go around the naysayers and achieve what I had my heart set on. I did not allow the experience to leave me bitter. I was proud of what I had accomplished. And I graduated number 50 out of 490 students, just missing the top 10% by hair. In hindsight, I see that those experiences I had prepared me for what I would go through as an adult. The pieces that were scattered started to come together. Those experiences taught me that I can do anything I put my mind to. I do not have to settle for someone else's idea of where I should be in life. Fortitude is built one challenge at a time. A challenge that I experienced and am still experiencing and will not ever stop experiencing is rejection. Rejection is the building blocks of fortitude. To not succumb to depression or self-pity due to constant rejection will only build up the spirit and strengthen the person. I participated in the Toastmasters International Speech Contest for District 52 in 2019 and won. And my speech was on rejection and how it shaped me. And rejection helped me to build up my spirit of fortitude, to have the courage to keep pushing in life, despite being ostracized, ignored, overlooked, or scorned. Have I rejected others? Yes. I am guilty of exactly what others have done to me. I am human, and I am not a victim. Just like other people, I have experienced so much rejection and have dished out rejection. That speech helped me to realize how much fortitude I had, and also how much fortitude I lacked. In my childhood, I've had those reject my friendship and leave me out of social events, and I still made other friends and lived life, but I had emotional pain that I hid from others. I was hurting from rejection, hurting from being seen as not good enough due to people's perceived notions, covering up my pain with a don't care attitude instead of allowing the pain to manifest and show itself truthfully. And even though as a child, the pieces started to come together, I was not yet a complete puzzle. I had not experienced enough of life's challenges to get a complete picture of who I was until I got saved. Before I got saved, I had to count up the costs to know that there would be some people who would not want to be around me due to my faith in Jesus, knowing that I would be persecuted for his name's sake. Was I ready for that? Could I endure that? I literally thought about that often in moments when I was unsaved. Was I ready to live a life of sacrifice where I had to continue to stand when others shied away or back out? Living for Jesus would definitely build up fortitude, because one has to have the courage to endure even during times of adversity or pain. After I got saved, the warfare ramped up. But Ephesians 6, verses 10 through 17 reminded me of the armor that God provided for those who are his. The Apostle Paul stated, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. And above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God." Now, after my conversion, it seemed as if Satan started to take a special interest in me, because he started to attack me with issues I never suffered with when I was unsaved. My prayer life has been my biggest weapon against Satan. I pray each morning for a lengthy amount of time. And in my first year of salvation, it was put upon my heart to carve out a few hours in the morning to pray, to read the Bible, and to worship. I did it, and I'm still doing it today. And my stamina and endurance were built one day at a time, being consistent in my daily morning time with God. The enemy attacks me with anxiety and bouts of depression, but when I pray, the anxiety lifts. And my spirit is filled with peace. Prayer is definitely a weapon against Satan. Satan's power is that he does not give up. He is relentless. And I learned that I had to be relentless in using my spiritual armor in order to walk in victory daily. I had to build my faith in God in order to be able to take up my shield of faith to block and counter Satan's weapons. One's response to life's challenges and his conduct when dealing with pain determines the strength of his fortitude. I have to build up my fortitude daily with prayer and faith. I am still putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And it is a daily fight. And there will not be an end to it until I leave this earth.